Coming up on Parachute Reborn, we'll be talking to Sherry Malaver Parada about her book, Supernatural South.
Welcome to Paratruth.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of Paratruth Reborn. We are, of course, live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans, 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast, and the United Public Radio Network. My name is Erik.
And I'm Justin.
And tonight's episode might require a rocking chair, a dark porch, and maybe some ice-cold sweet tea, because we're heading into the American South. The South has an incredible history of folklore and storytelling, but mixed into those traditions are some genuinely strange accounts. Ghosts, witches, cryptids, mysterious people, bizarre creatures, and even encounters that might point to something extraterrestrial. Our guest tonight has collected many of those stories, and we'd like to welcome her to the show. Sherry, welcome to Paratruth Reborn.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Before we dive into all the strange and spooky stories, can you just tell us what originally sparked your fascination with folklore and urban legends?
I would say I blame that on my grandmother. She had a ton of spooky stories, and I was just obsessed from the time I was a little kid. And I started collecting them over the course of my life. The strange, the spooky, and the unexplained. And so this book actually has been in the process of being written for years because I just kept collecting and collecting. And then I had relatives in places like Alabama, Mississippi, Texas. I'm like, oh, do you have any good stories? And they're like, oh my gosh, yes. So I just collected it all into the book, and I sent it out, the manuscript out, and I didn't know if there were people like as nerdy as me who would be into it. But I guess there are, because I got published.
There you go. And now you're on a paranormal podcast on top of that.
Right.
Now, why the American South? Just because you have family there? Do you live in the South?
I grew up in Taylor, Arkansas. It's a small town right on the border of Louisiana. You go like a mile and you're over into Spring Hill, Louisiana, and Webster Parish. And I grew up on 40 acres in the middle of nowhere, even outside of the town that I went to school in. We were outside of that. And it was the perfect backdrop for lots of spooky things. I kind of freaked myself out more than once, thinking maybe there was a Loup-Garou that was gonna peer through the window in my bedroom when I was a little kid. So yeah.
Well, I spent quite a few years myself living in the South, and vacationed most of my life in the southern coast of North Carolina. And one thing that has really never ceased to surprise me is the amount of folklore that exists between Georgia and North Carolina and Mississippi. Now, there's been everything that I've heard, from stories of like cryptids and witch medicine to ghosts and pirate ships. Southern culture just really has a strong oral storytelling tradition. So how important was that tradition in the stories that you discovered and told yourself?
I think it's very important because a lot of the stories in my book are they're actually have been passed down from generation to generation to generation. And the Ozarks in northern Arkansas, southern Missouri have a really strong background with those stories. And also Arkansas and Louisiana, there's a lot of lore there. And I think it's because it's just an older part of the United States, and you have so many cultural influences from the indigenous populations there, to the African American population, the European population. So it just gives you this perfect mix of of folklore and stories that are told generation to generation.
Mhm.
Now, do you feel that there is a bit of truth or a lot of truth in folklore, or is it something where we come up with these stories to help be like a cautionary tale for going in the woods or going into the lake, stuff like that?
I think there is. I think that it's kind of folklore is kind of the same premise as a legend. There was a kernel of truth to begin with, and maybe it got changed, maybe it was exaggerated, but I definitely think, like, I mean, I'm gonna go out and I'm not gonna say that exactly, but I think there has to be some kind of basis for the Fouke monster in Fouke, Arkansas. It's their version of a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot, because too many people have reported it, too many people have had encounters with it, so there's got to be something there.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny that today I wore my Ohio Sasquatch Project T-shirt that I got while working on Expedition X at the beginning of the summer, and somebody today at work had seen it and said, "Sasquatch in Ohio? Don't they just live in cold climates?" I was like, "Oh man, you're opening a can of worms right now. We don't got time. We don't have time to talk about this, but we're going to." So I
They never heard of the grass man? What?
never heard of the Grassman, never heard of Bigfoot, never, I was like, "Oh, the Yeti is what you're thinking of." Like, well, it's the same thing. I was like, "Oh, but it's not.
What?
It's not." Man, you guys are hurting my feelings.
Folklorically speaking, it's not.
Folklorically speaking, it's not, but yeah.
Exactly.
Oh. Well, so did working on Supernatural South really like change how you personally look at paranormal stories?
I mean, so I've always looked at the paranormal as not really paranormal,
Mhm.
just different. Like, I mean, and this is just my opinion, but every morning we get up, we fix our coffee, we go to work, we come home, we binge watch Netflix, we go to bed, rinse and repeat. So, so when somebody comes across something they can't explain, they're like, because it shakes you out of what you perceive as reality, unless you're the type of person who does go and investigates these things. And I think it's important to keep an open mind. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know the answer to it. I'm just saying that, I mean, sometimes you just have to look around in life and take notice of the things that are going on around you.
Right.
Mhm. Now, people hear the term or phrase Southern Gothic all the time. What does that mean to you?
To me, Southern Gothic is kind of like, it brings to mind the French Quarter for me, and the old haunted plantations and the Civil War era ghost and things like that. The vampire tales of New Orleans and things like that. That's kind of what Southern Gothic means to me.
Yeah, yeah. And like on top of that, there's something really about the environment itself in the South. The swamps, the Spanish moss, old houses, extreme heat, isolated roads, all those things that kind of create this melting pot that almost becomes like another character in these stories on top of it. Do you think the geography just helps create the folklore on top of it all?
I definitely think so. And like you were talking about Georgia and
Mhm.
the Carolinas, I've been to North Carolina and I've been to Georgia. And it's more of a rural. I mean, there's Atlanta and the capitals and
Sure.
stuff. But if you get outside of that, it is rural. And I can guarantee you, most normal people, if their car broke down on a rural road at night and they started walking, they would be hearing things, they would be seeing things. Like, I do think that the environment contributes to
Yeah.
the folklore and the stories. Yeah.
Now, I feel that the U.S. as a whole is kind of a huge melting pot for different cultures, but the South really is where it kind of started
Oh,
for
yeah.
that. How much does that feed into the influence for the ghost stories and the different tales down in the South?
Oh, I think it feeds into it a lot because one of the stories in my book about the boo hag, that's from the Gullah culture, and they're in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, and so that was a traditional story that was handed down by the generations. And I don't know how much time you've ever spent in the rural Carolinas in Georgia, but if you've ever seen a house that's paint blue, or you've seen the blue bottles in the yard on things, that's the belief that you can capture those evil spirits like the boo hag and stuff and keep them from coming into your home. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that. I've seen food dogs, I've seen brooms, hung on doors. And I spent time, I lived in Atlanta for a while, and then I moved to Savannah, and I lived there for several months. I had the opportunity. It's supposed to be like a 2-week thing, and turned out to be like almost 4 months long. And then of course, yeah, like growing up, going to North Carolina, Carolina Beach area is like an hour north of South Carolina. There's been, you go back on the islands and not inland, but like deeper into the island, you start to see a lot of that history kind of approach, and it's like, oh, this is really cool, and there's things that just stand out. And my curiosity always peaks when I see those things. So it's like, okay, well, what's this? What's that? Take photos. And it's just a lot of fun. But one thing that like Justin and I had actually talked about, we've been to New Orleans. I've been there a couple times. He and I went probably 3 years ago now, I think, something like that. Was it 2 years ago? So because of that, we were inspired to do an episode on the show about the Loup-Garou mansion. And one thing that kind of brought to attention was not only the history of the home and the things that happened there, but also the folklore that revolves around it. So do you think that folklore can sometimes be preserved in pieces of history that otherwise would have just maybe disappeared?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind. Absolutely. From the old antiques of those eras to a house, a lake, whatever, I think it does help preserve the folklore down south. Absolutely. The mansions and everything.
Well, you've already brought it up, and it was the next on our list of questions to ask. What is the boo hag?
Okay, now you're going to want to avoid her because it's a pretty scary story from the Gullah traditions. And the thing that I can probably equate it most to would be like a succubus, because the boo hag can appear in any form. The boo hag can be a beautiful woman. You could be standing next to a boo hag and not even know it, according to the traditions. So the thing about it is, she comes into the house at night, and she can wear other people's skin. So she comes into the house at night, and she basically drains the life force from someone, like a vampire would drain blood, but it's like the life force. And people, it went to explaining why people would wake up exhausted and not know, and it was because there was a boo hag draining their life force out of them at night. And the tradition is that if you put salt in front of your window sills and in front of your doors, that the boo hag can't come into your house.
Okay.
Well, now, I mean, the idea of waking up unable to move with something sitting on your chest, like the boo hag or a succubus, incubus, a mare, even. It sounds obviously remarkably similar to what many call sleep paralysis. How much overlap do you see between folklore and experiences that science may explain differently today?
Okay, so I do see the overlap, and I have had the sleep paralysis before, where I could have sworn that I was awake. I just knew that I was awake, and I was seeing something, and I was obviously asleep. I couldn't move, and so I've experienced that, and it's very terrifying. But I would point to one thing so as to not overlook the supernatural. I know you guys, I'm sure you've heard of, Nightmare on Elm Street. And so the director had gotten the idea because he had seen 3 Asian males, young males, like 18, 20. And all 3 cases, they had reported that they were being chased by a demon in their sleep. And all 3 of them died after telling their family about the nightmare. And they were all, I believe, from the Hmong population. And so, I mean, yeah, is it a coincidence? I mean, it could be, but it sounds pretty creepy to me. I mean,
Right.
you know, I mean, and technically, I guess you can be scared to death, but it's weird that all 3 males were from that culture. All 3 males reported the same nightmare. All 3 males died in their sleep the next night.
Right. You know, we see like similar things with here in the US too, where people will interact with certain haunted objects, and then suddenly on the way home, something tragic happens, you know, and maybe it's not always death, but, you know, car accidents or illnesses, injuries, things like that. And it's like, it's one thing if it happens to 1 or 2 people, but when it's consistent, when multiple people are interacting with this thing and then something bad happens, it ripple effects. It's like, well, now it feels like there's something to it that science can explain.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of the thing of the book is I let people draw their own conclusions about it. But when you have so many people reporting similar occurrences or similar sightings, experiences, you kind of just can't really chalk it up to, you know, coincidence anymore.
Right.
Well, and something we do on this show is always try to come from both believer and skeptic side of things. Does explaining some experiences automatically explain all of them away?
I mean, no. And that's the thing. I mean, if you have somebody who is a skeptic, no matter what they see or hear, they're probably, if they're dead set on being a skeptic, they're going to be a skeptic.
Yeah.
Some people are a little more easily influenced than other people. I think that there are definitely things in this world that we can't explain, at least scientifically, to my mind. But maybe there's an explanation for it, but we just haven't advanced that much as a population, you know, as a human species to understand what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, you know, it's like we see it time and time again. It's like you have 2 factors where it's either full acceptance or it's complete denial.
Right.
And like there is a happy medium. You know, I think it's important to deny the things that you can debunk, but still stay curious about those same things that are like, but what if? You know, because you never know what really. I mean, we don't know what exists out there. You know, how often do we hear people say, "Oh, you're only using a part of your brain, like to live on a daily basis"? Like, okay, well, what happens if you unlock the whole thing?
Right.
Exactly. And you know, and wouldn't it be horrible if there were no more mysteries left?
That would be so boring.
It
Like, I'm
would.
already bored often. Like that would just be worse.
Right.
I think many of us are because of the age that we live in right now. We're used to constant information, and if we don't have that, or if it's too lengthy, I think our attention spans have gone drastically down, especially in the past several years.
Oh yeah. I used to be a high school Spanish teacher, and I will tell you, tops, you have 15 minutes to get your point across.
Yeah.
15 minutes. That is even pretty lengthy for some people.
They're tuned out after that. Okay?
Oh man. Well, so it wouldn't be our show if we didn't talk about one of our favorite branches of cryptozoology, and that is the idea of the wolf-like creatures that exist. And in this case, we're talking about the Loup-Garou. So, speaking of this creature, how does this differ from like traditional werewolf entities or creatures that most people know of?
So the Loup-Garou are, some of the Cajuns call it a Rougarou. It comes more from a, I think, cautionary tale, because it was one of the traditions is if you break Lent for 7 years in a row, then you'll turn into a Rougarou for a year. And so I think it's more of a trying to get kids to behave and keep them in line. But there have been Rougarou, Dogman, whatever you want to call it, sightings in the swamp. And, I mean, who's to say they're not seeing something, because those swamps you can get lost in and never be found again. I mean, if there were a species that were living there that hadn't been discovered, yeah, I would put my money on like the Atchafalaya Basin or one of the swamp areas in Louisiana for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and something that I've kind of started believing, especially over the past few years, is that we've got like the lake monsters, like Nessie, and things that would hint towards a dinosaur-like creature, the pterosaurs that people see and stuff like that. I've firmly believed that maybe the Dogman or the werewolf sightings could possibly be the dire wolf still alive.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't write that off at all. In fact, there was a Ozark creature that people were claiming to see, and it could lift a cow off the ground, according to the traditions. And this lady, I believe it was in the 1990s somewhere. Anyway, she saw this huge bird swoop past her car, and she could not think of what it could be because she had never seen anything like that. When she went home, she jumped on the computer and started looking at things, and she pointed to a pterodactyl, and she said it looked exactly like that. So I mean, I think it's certainly possible that in the rural areas, maybe, some kind of dinosaur could have survived. I mean, I'm sure every anthropologist in the United States is probably like giving me the stink eye on camera right now. But I mean, we just don't know. We don't know. And there have been species that have been discovered that we had no idea they existed. So who's to say under the right conditions something couldn't have survived? I mean, there's tales all the time of the Tasmanian tiger being spotted.
Just going to bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's still like there's photo evidence, video evidence that pops up every once in a while that it shows a tail or like shows you behind brush. It's like that's clearly looks like a Tasmanian tiger, but whether or not it is, you just don't have the significant evidence to prove it. And I think that's kind of the case in most of these situations, especially here in Ohio. We think about the Dogman as being one, Bigfoot being another, and those sightings have ramped up over the last couple of years. But something that has also really ramped up is our black bear population that has been moving over from Pennsylvania. And so a lot of this could very well be mistaken identity. But at the same time, you can't rule out the possibility that maybe these things are existing in the deep woods. I mean, we have a national park here, one of the biggest in the country, and it's like there's so much unexplored. Who knows where they're living? And so many caves and crevices around here, too. On top of that, like, you never know.
Oh, exactly. And I was watching a documentary one time, and I believe it was the Carolinas that during the Civil War era or the pre-Civil War era, there were a lot of black bears, and that was like common in the Carolinas to see one.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your personal opinion or even professional opinion on the creatures like the Loup-Garou? Do you think that it's a real creature? Like, is it more of a cautionary tale? Is it a hybrid? What are your thoughts?
I think the traditional Loup-Garou or Rougarou was, a cautionary tale to, keep kids on their best behavior. But I do think that the more current sightings, I think people are seeing something. Mm-hmm. I can't say exactly because, I mean, obviously I wasn't there when they saw it, but I think they're seeing something. And I think some things can be ruled out. I don't think that a bear could run on two legs for very long.
Right.
So I definitely think they're seeing something. I often wondered because like years before, like during my great grandfather's time, a lot of like carnivals and circuses and stuff would come through the rural South and stuff. And so I always kind of in the back of my mind, like with the Fouke monster, I always kind of wondered, like, could it have been escaped gorillas from a show? Or, like, what I go through my head and I'm like, okay, what are the logical explanations for it?
Right.
And then what could, with people like cryptozoologists, what would they say? And I mean, it's just kind of one of those things that's hard to tell. I mean, I definitely think people are seeing something, because I think most people, I mean, some people, yeah, they always want attention, but some people, they're risking their reputation coming forward and saying, hey, I saw this. A lot of people that, they're a doctor, or they're a lawyer, or, they're a pilot. I mean, when they come forward and they say something, they're risking their reputation, and people going, oh, that guy's nuts, or that woman's,
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's something that really, I think a lot of people don't take into consideration. They're just like, oh, well, I would never do this. So, why would this weirdo be sharing these stories unless they were a weirdo, right? And it's like, well, they have a life too. They probably have families. They have, all these things. It's like, I've shared stories. I told Justin a story where I thought I saw Bigfoot on my way home from Virginia once. And it wasn't. I was tired. It was dusk. There was a tree, and the tree looked like Bigfoot crouching behind another tree. And I was so excited, and it wasn't what I thought it was.
You didn't get a picture, so how do we know that?
Exactly. That's true. One other thing I actually want to bring up about the Loup-Garou, or really any of these cryptid creatures, there's this ongoing kind of new age view of these creatures, because we're not seeing getting physical evidence of them, that maybe they're spiritual, maybe they exist in another realm, or maybe they're tapas. So could something like a Loup-Garou, with all of these stories passed down from generation to generation, possibly have manifested into some sort of spiritual entity? Because we've definitely heard stories of werewolves appearing in haunted locations.
Right. I mean, it could. I mean, I've heard of like Buddhist monks being able to concentrate so hard that they created a tulpa. Another thing is too, I mean, and this is going to take us on another tangent completely, but a lot of people, they wonder if they're not perhaps some kind of alien creature. I mean, I don't know, but I would say that, when you look at animals that we know they exist and we've seen them and they're in aquariums, octopi, strangest creature. I couldn't have made it up in a million years, and it just doesn't seem to fit in with anything here. So,
Right.
And some scientists propose maybe it hitched a ride on a meteor or something.
Right. Well, then, and on top of that, we have all these stories, old sailing stories about these giant octopus and giant squids that would take down boats, supposedly, and stuff like that. And it's like, for a long time during those periods, we didn't know that the giant squid existed.
Right.
It's relatively, the whole Kraken story, and it's like,
Right.
well, there it is. There's the evidence. It exists, and it's like really cool, because we actually do have cryptids in our own backyard that do exist. They just, they just have a scientific name now because they're no longer these mysterious creatures.
Right.
Well, and that's what cryptozoology is
Right.
of the unknown. And they eventually, I mean, that's funny to say, because the thylacine falls under cryptozoology because it's an extinct creature, but they have found evidence that it's still alive.
Right. And even if you think about the old video, I think it was from the 60s, Gimlin Patterson, am I saying that right? They did not, like, special effects in Hollywood did not have the technology to make something like that where you could kind of see the muscle under the fur. And so, like, I mean, if I had to bet one way or another, I think it's real.
That video is actually under scrutiny right now. About there's a documentary coming out about the fact that it was faked. But
potential fact.
Well,
we'll see when the documentary comes out. But I think it's a load of crud, but we'll find out. We'll see what they say.
That is one of the most scrutinized videos out there, because, I mean, first and foremost, it was done in the 70s. Secondly, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, the video quality would not have been that great on a personal video camera back in those days. So to say the graininess, the blurriness, blah blah blah, it's like they didn't have the video technology that we have even 20 years ago and even today.
Right.
So yeah, a lot and that's one of the biggest things you hear about any type of cryptid video picture. Oh, it's blurry. Oh, it looks like it's AI. And don't get me wrong, AI has completely thrown a huge gear into the works for this
Oh, yeah.
stuff. But before we get any further, we're going to hear a commercial from our supporting sponsor, and we'll be right back.
A quick thank you to our supporting sponsor, Nodakian Studios. Looking for something truly one of a kind? Nodakian Studios creates high-fired ceramics that are dishwasher, microwave, and food safe. Every mug, bowl, vase, bottle, and planter is wheel-thrown and hand-decorated, making each piece unique. They also offer pottery classes for all skill levels. Whether you're touching clay for the first time or looking to expand your artistic skills. Nodakian Studios, where craftsmanship and creativity come together. Find out more at nodakianstudios.com.
All right, folks, we are back. Now, before we got into the commercial there, we were talking about the Loup-Garou, but there's like so many different tales in your book and in the South. Something that I've heard a lot is of ghost stories and historical tragedy seem almost inseparable in the Southern folklore. Why do you think traumatic places generate so many haunting legends like that?
I've thought a lot about it, and I think it comes down to almost like it makes an imprint on time, like the tragedy that it just, and maybe what we're seeing aren't ghosts. Maybe it's just a replay of what happened because of all the emotion that was there. So I think that, yeah, I mean, definitely, even like, I didn't put it in the book, but I did put it in the article that I wrote for Llewellyn, was the P Ridge, one of the Civil War sites. And it is highly haunted, and people see, like, on a regular basis, one of the Confederate soldiers on horseback riding, and they see, but ghostly form. And, they'll go into this tavern that had been a field hospital, a makeshift field hospital, and people have heard screaming and moaning, and they've seen blood on the floor or soldiers on the floor that just disappear. And there are a lot of stories that come out of there, and it's got to make you wonder, like, what's going on, And I think it comes down to, that was a horrific period in time, a violent, bloody period in time. A lot of those soldiers were teenagers. I can't imagine feeling that kind of fear, even at the age I am now, much less if I had to face something like that when I was 16. So I think that emotion makes an imprint on those places.
For sure. And you see that a lot through, like, Pennsylvania, through Gettysburg. It looks like these videos of what would be spirits just walking in a line, almost like they're marching. There's really no, there's no intelligence there. It's just like, it's just there. And whether or not it's residual or it's because of energy that was spent there, I mean, who knows? But the fact is that there are things that are happening because of the events of history.
Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely think that's why it's tied together. And when you see so many places where there was a war, there was slavery, there was some kind of tragedy, and there's like residual hauntings. And I think it's all of that emotion and fear and violence that makes it imprint there.
Yeah. Well, now, in your research for the book, did you find any cases where, like, the popular ghost story and the actual historical record didn't quite match up?
So one of my places that I've been to a lot of places in Louisiana. My mom's family was from Louisiana. That I wanted to go is the Myrtles. It's a haunted plantation. You can just tour it or you can spend the night. And people have reported seeing, all kinds of ghosts. I have no doubt in my mind that it's haunted. But one of the most famous ghosts named Chloe, who was a slave and who allegedly had her ear cut off for listening at her master's door, so she could tell, like she would tell the other slaves if somebody was going to be sold or traded or whatever. And supposedly he cut her ear off and she wore a turban after that to cover that up. And so supposedly her ghost haunts there because she accidentally poisoned the plantation owner's family and they died, and then the other slaves hung her because they didn't want to be the brunt of the fury of the owner of the plantation. But there's been no historical record of there being a Chloe. Like they can't trace it back historically to align with the stories and what people are seeing. So I have no doubt that it's haunted because a lot of people have, and even I've seen footage that people have gone to visit, and then it's like on paranormal evidence and stuff like that. But that story, they have no history of that. So it's hard to say,
Yeah, for sure. And it's one of those things where it's like, there's certainly that group of people who are adamant that Chloe is absolutely a real spirit that lived there, a real person that had lived there at one point, even if there is no evidence to support it whatsoever.
Right.
Well,
And
a lot
I
of people
I get
believe
it. Like some of
then-
those records in the South are so old, and you can't find birth. I mean, I've been trying to trace my mom's side. You can't find the birth certificates on some of the people. They just pop up all of a sudden when they got married at like 20 or something, but you have no idea where they came from.
Right.
And a lot of that, this is why I'm particularly on the trail of my mother's side. A lot of that in Louisiana, they would say passé blanc, which means white passing.
Okay.
So if you were of African American heritage, but you looked like you were white, you didn't want your records or your birth certificates or anything else to be found because that put you at a significant disadvantage in those days.
I see.
Now, this is a question from our paratruthers community, and I wanted to make sure we asked it since we're on the ghosts. Have you ever seen a ghost yourself?
So I've had two experiences. So the first one was, it actually happened in the house that I'm in.
Okay.
This was my parents' house, and I inherited it after they died. But in the bedroom upstairs, there's Venetian blinds, and we have these windows. You crank the thing to bring it out, and then you crank it back in, and then you latch it on the top and on the bottom, and it seals. So it's totally no colds getting in, no winds getting in, whatever. So, and I'm pretty obsessive compulsive. So that night I had done that. I checked all the windows and the doors and stuff. I was sleeping in the bedroom, and all of a sudden the Venetian blinds came out like a giant gust of wind had hit and then banged back. So I laid in bed for a while because I was kind of paralyzed. And I'm going, okay, there's a logical explanation for this. I know there's a logical explanation for this. I'm going to get the courage up to turn the light on, and I'm going to walk over to the window, and I'm going to see what happened. So I do. I work my courage up. I turn on the light. I walk to the window. The window is shut tight as a drum, and there is I can see the pine trees by the window, no movement, no nothing. So that one freaked me out. The other thing that happened to me, I had a friend over and we were just messing around, and they had a camera. It was a brand new camera. And then they were like a photography buff, and so they wanted to take my picture by the chair. And I said, okay. And so we took my picture. And then when the film was developed, there's like somebody standing right here. Their face, you could see their face, and they were looking at the side of my head, and I'm just standing there smiling, having no clue that there is anything around me. So those would be like my two closest encounters. I've never seen a ghost manifest. I've never seen or talked to a ghost or anything like that, but I had the Venetian blind incident, and then evidently I had one staring at me in a photo.
I mean, that photo thing is wild.
Yeah.
That'd be scary. You
That
know,
was-
because
Just
then
to
it's like
have
you're
the
laying in
actual
bed. Is it
evidence,
right here
yeah.
next to me now? Is it?
Yeah,
you
like
know, what
right
is it
here.
doing? That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's one thing to have a feeling or have that experience, but to have the actual evidence that it was there, that's a creep level in and of itself much higher than. And prime example, I got touched a couple of times on investigations, but never had any type of evidence, photographic evidence, that there was anything near me, anything that would have been remotely in the room, stuff like that. So to hear that story is that is a class A piece of evidence right there.
For sure.
And and then my dad took it to work to show everybody at work. I've got to find that photo. I don't know what happened to it after my dad died, because my dad was like, "Can I have the photo?" And I'm like, "Sure." And so then, I'm sure it's somewhere in this house, because my parents never threw anything away. So I'm sure it's here somewhere. I have to find it. But just to, and that's the frightening thing, is like, who knows? Maybe we're walking around with otherworldly beings all around us. I think it was Stephen Hawking that said, theoretically, there could be wormholes the size of like a fraction of a sewing needle, and you wouldn't even know it.
Right.
So, maybe they're closer than we think.
Yeah.
Right, for sure.
No, when it comes to telling these stories, and you find I don't know, you find yourself in a position where the history doesn't quite match with the legend. Do you find that like correcting the history ever takes away from the legends itself?
Yeah, like I said, when you go back a certain amount of time, records are sketchy to begin with. I mean, maybe it really is true, but we just can't find the records on it. But yeah, I don't think that something should be discounted just because we can't go through historical records and find it. If enough people are seeing, and maybe your name wasn't Chloe, but if enough people are seeing Chloe, there's got to be something there.
Right.
Well, and for, maybe there has been paranormal evidence that has come up where a spirit said the name Chloe. Maybe it wasn't that spirit or that being person that supposedly it was, but that could be where it came from.
Very well. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, something that you have in the book, and not very many people associate this with the South, is UFO stories. Did you discover that UFO lore is more deeply woven into the Southern history than most people realize?
I think it is. I think, of course, and rightly so, Roswell got, most of the attention when it comes to UFOs. But there are definitely stories of UFOs in the South, the Aurora crash, the Kelly Green men. And honestly, if I were an alien and I wanted to abduct somebody, I would do it in the rural South, because, when you get to certain places, the houses all jammed next to each other and stuff. You get up north, you got the row houses in Boston and things like that. But in the South, you have a lot of rural communities that are spaced out really far. So, it would be the perfect place for a UFO to land, or for a UFO to observe people, or for abductions, or whatever they wanted to do.
That's how I feel about living in North Dakota too. It's so rural that there'd be so many encounters. We just don't know about them, or people aren't talking about them, because North Dakotans are very, very conservative and do not want to share things like that most of the time.
Oh, I'm in Montana right now.
Okay.
So I get you. Like, I am so fascinated with the UFO story about him hovering over Malmstrom Air Force Base. But any Montanan that's from here is like, yeah, no, it didn't happen. It did not happen. I'm like, okay.
They're going home and rocking in their chair like, oh my God, it happened. It really did happen. It really did happen.
Yeah, it's the same way up here. They don't want to admit anything, although I have, it's funny, every Montanan that I've asked about the Malmstrom Air Force Base UFO incident is like, it never happened. But every year at Halloween, they will do ghost tours at the old prison up at Deer Lodge. And they're like, it's haunted. And I'm like, so you don't have a problem with prison ghosts, but you have a problem with UFOs.
Right.
Okay.
Oh man. Well, so I mean, UFOs. Historically speaking, we see in ancient writings and texts that they go back to ancient times.
Mm-hmm.
But do you see that UFO stories tend to be more of modern folklore in kind of the same way that early generations talked about ghosts or monsters or any other supernatural being?
Well, I think that it goes back a long ways. Like you said, you see it in even like the pyramids in Egypt. They had renderings of what looked like somebody with an astronaut helmet on and, on a flying craft. Yeah. I do think it probably, like after Roswell and stuff, like I feel like it got more in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. So it's more kind of urban legend, kind of Hollywood lore now. But I mean, honestly, I think it would be extremely arrogant to assume that we're the only living creatures, in the whole universe. And I don't really, people get scared about aliens and stuff, but I figure if they're intelligent enough to travel to this planet, and they have mastered like intergalactic, travel, we're probably not that fascinating to them. Because our technology would be so behind their technology. Yeah. And so I think that, it's gotten kind of urban legend vibe from Hollywood and stuff. But I definitely think there's probably been entities visiting here from other universes for a long time. I mean, even if you look at the pyramids in Egypt, but then there's pyramids in China, but then there's pyramids in South America. Back when nobody was traveling, they didn't even know about each other. And it would be, I guess you could say like Carl Jung, the collective conscious, everybody decided building a pyramid was a good idea at the same time. Right. That seems kind of far-fetched too. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely and we've heard about that so many times on the show too. It's just the coincidence. It's too much of a coincidence when it's spread across cultures and continents and oceans. It's like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And of course, we can't scientifically connect the dots, but there are some things that kind of like, well, look at the alignment of the stars and how many of these align with the stars. Or certain constellations.
Exactly. They even not too long ago, they found a pyramid in Bosnia. They didn't even know it existed. I mean, they knew it as a hill, but then when they really started examining it, years and years and years ago, somebody actually constructed that. So, or the pyramids, was that some kind of way they navigated having those pyramids here? Was it, and a lot of them too, I've heard, I'm not as knowledgeable about this, but I've heard a lot of them are on those like ley lines.
Yeah.
Instead of built. So,
there's been some that have even been discovered in Antarctica as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it's like you can even get into the religious aspect of it. It's like taking after the whole idea of the Tower of Babel and people wanting to build up to the heavens. It's like there's all these connections that are just like, whoa. It's really, I think it's fascinating. It's cool.
I do too. Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Now, if somebody wanted to take a supernatural road trip through the South, where would be the first place you would tell them to go?
Oh, okay. So that's because, oh my gosh, you have such good material there. I would say Savannah would be a great one. They have so many people who died during, like, I think it was the yellow fever epidemic. So I've heard that place is just haunted crazy. Louisiana, New Orleans, you've got the LaLaurie Mansion, you've got the Gardette La Petrie massacre. I believe that mansion is still there. I'm not sure. You've got the swamps where you've got the dogman sightings, the Bigfoots. I mean, I don't think you could go wrong hitting Louisiana or Georgia first. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I have to second that. Like, just the energy in Savannah is wild, and the ghost tours that you could take and learn from, like, I mean, they call them hanging trees, but at the time the trees didn't exist there, some of them. But the gallows and whatnot, and the energy on the field or within these little grassy areas or nooks throughout the city is just like, oh man, there's so much rich history there. You go to like a Moondog Brewery, and there's just a really cool ghost story. But on top of that, like the New Orleans vampires as well. I mean, it's like you really, if you want to just learn everything about the South in terms of hauntings, just go to New Orleans. Like, you can kind of get everything there.
You can go. Yeah, I mean, I think I think it has to be guided now, and it's kind of off. But there's Marie Laveau's tomb there. Yep. And there's supposedly the pirate Lafitte at what was one tavern. I can't remember the name, but he's supposedly pointing in the portrait at where he hid his treasure. I mean, there's so much. Yeah.
Well, so now that we're like kind of come around full circle, and this is something that we talk about frequently on this show, could old folklore and modern paranormal phenomena sometimes be different cultural interpretations of the same experience, or do you think like a lot of these experiences are very similar overall?
You see a lot of I see a lot of similarities between urban legends and folklore. And I have it somewhere packed away, but one of my favorite books was the Urban Legend Dictionary. And I got to see all of the urban legends that were collected. And it is, and in generations from now, that'll be like the man with the hook for an arm, and the babysitter stories will be like folklore for generations behind us. It just happens to be more modern adaptations of what's going on now, or in the last few decades. So I do see a lot of similarities between the folklore and the urban legends, and I don't discount any of it. I mean, I like to keep an open mind about things, and so
Now, what is one thing that you hope people take from either the book or our conversation tonight?
Okay, so one of the things that I hope is, first of all, I love the idea that these stories will keep going. I want the folklore, the stories, the ghost stories, the cryptids, I want it to keep going, is one of the major reasons I wrote the book. And the other thing that I would want people to take from tonight is keep an open mind. Just keep an open mind. And if you do see something, I mean, I'm the worst at doing this, but grab your phone and start recording. I mean,
it's easy to say. It's so hard to do in the moment.
Yeah. When you see something weird, you're just like, and you don't think to grab your phone out of your pocket and start recording.
Half the time, I don't even capture the pictures I should be capturing in everyday life, let alone a paranormal experience.
Yeah, there's like, okay, so there's like there's a resident pheasant that runs around this area, and we've all named him Fred. PH, of course. Fred.
Okay.
Fred the pheasant. I see that sucker outside in the yard all the time. As soon as I grab my phone, he has taken off like a rocket. He exists, but I can't get a clear photo of him.
So he's the cryptid of your area.
Fred is the cryptid, yes, that lives around my house somewhere.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, just keep an open mind, because you might be surprised at what you find. And for sure, at the very least, if you start investigating it, it'll take you down a really neat trail, finding historical things that you didn't know existed. So, yeah.
For sure. All right. Well, we are coming to the end of this episode here. So we do want to give you the time to tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find your work, and share any other information that you'd like.
Okay. So if you want to go, first of all, my book released a few days ago. So it's on Amazon, it's on Llewellyn, Barnes and Noble, any major bookseller you can get the book from. My personal website for my author's page is Sherry hyphen Malaver hyphen Parada.com. And I'm hoping to share some new stories on there soon, but it does have the book and everything on there. Instagram, I'm Sherry Michelle 32. LinkedIn, I'm Sherry Malaver Parada. And I would love to hear from anybody who has creepy stories or they have questions or just anything. I'm happy to talk paranormal anytime.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, Sherry, thank you so much for joining us on Paratruth. It's been a blast talking with you. We're going to go ahead and close out the show here, but we'll talk to you in a little while.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Bye. All right, everybody. So we asked our Paratruther community, which Southern supernatural mystery would you most want to investigate? Well, 28% of you said historic hauntings. Another 28% said the Loup-Garou. That'd be my choice too, most likely. 21 said the Boo Hag. Y'all are crazy. 15% said a mysterious UFO encounter, and 8% said sirens of the Goth Sea. That is also a little. I mean, you guys know what sirens do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, hey, you do you, y'all. So, you folks have been listening to Paratruth Reborn with Justin and Erik on United Public Radio Network. If tonight's conversation changed the way you think about Southern folklore, follow Paratruth Reborn and join the Paratruther community. Help us continue separating fact from fiction and uncovering what hides beyond the human understanding. Join our supporters club today through Spreaker and get extra content such as off-air conversations with our guests, ad-free episodes and episode extensions, special mystery vlogs, as well as behind-the-scenes access to our show. Guys, some truths are hidden in the dark, but we're here to bring them to light. This has been a live episode on 107.7 FM New Orleans, 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast, and the United Public Radio Network. So until next week, where you'll find us, same time, same channel. My name is Erik.
And I'm Justin.
Peace.